welcome back to another episode of Living Authentically, Becoming Your True Self, the podcast where we explore what it really means to live, speak, and lead from a place of truth and kindness. As always, I'm your host, Sue Whitaker. I am a life transitions identity coach, and I guide individuals through significant life changes, helping them to rediscover their true selves and embrace new beginnings with confidence and clarity. So today's episode is one I have been really looking forward to recording. We are going to be talking about the incredible connection between humans and horses, stroke equines. And today I am joined by a lovely guest of mine, Sarah Williamson, who is a coach who helps owners and horses to understand each other, what goes on in their heads, and to support them to make sure that they have a better relationship so they can lead more fulfilling lives. So I'm going to use the pun of saddle up as we uncover more about the topic. And I'm going to say, hi, Sarah. Thanks for joining me. How are you today?
I'm very good, thank you. And thank you for inviting me on to talk to you about this.
That's great. I'm really excited about this because I am absolutely passionate. And when we actually started talking about um, your background and my background, I think it was similar but also very different. So yeah, thanks very much for spending the time with me today.
No, you're welcome.
So just let us start from the beginning. Very good place to start. So talk to me a little bit about where it all started for you.
So my direct family are not horsey at all, but I have my mum's cousins were very horsey, and my godmother is one of my mum's cousins, and she always had horses. And for as long as I can remember, I was horse mad. When I've got a sister who's 2 years older than me, and the local riding school where we live didn't let children start riding till they were 5. And so mum and dad took me along, obviously, because I was only 3, for Emma to have her first riding lesson. And apparently I just stood in the middle of the yard and screamed until they put me on a horse. I started riding at the riding school, just sort of odds and sods, not regularly, from when I was really quite tiny.
Yeah.
And by the time I was sort of 5 or 6, I was riding the naughty ponies. And I've always got on with the naughty ponies, shall we call them?
Yeah.
It worked. They worked for me. And again, I say we never had our own horses. And when I was about 9, we moved away and we went to a different riding school where we'd moved to. And I loathed it. From the minute I walked in, I hated it. I hated the energy. And I say I was only 9 or 10. Hated the energy. The horses were stabled a lot. There were a lot of quite wealthy owners where the horses were very precious poppets, and so they were not turned out. And they were, it just wasn't. It wasn't. I didn't like it. My sister loved it because my sister's dream of horses is to have, her horse brought up the front steps of the house,
Yeah.
all
Yeah.
clean and polished. She hops on and then she hops off. Whereas if someone tacks up my horse for me or even grooms my horse for me, I'm like, no, I need to do that because it's all part of knowing what you're dealing with that horse on that day.
I love that.
So,
I love that.
so for
Yeah.
Emma, this all posh, prim and proper, everything had its, hoof all put on
Yeah.
every day and blah, blah, blah. But they weren't turned out and they were over rugged and they were all had sort of behavioural issues and all this nonsense. So even at that young age, I said no, and I actually hardly rode for a long time. There was a little riding school in the grounds of a stately home that turned school in the area.
Yeah.
And it was ramshackle and falling down. They just used to have hacking ponies and do trekking around this sort of massive, what's now National Trust estate.
Yeah.
And I used to go and help there occasionally. And even then, I used to get the difficult ones. I remember one very, very clear one. Can't think of the pony's name, which is really bugging me because I did know of his name. It's just got out of my head, but it'll come back.
That's okay. Yeah.
It was Donald. That's right. It was a Highland pony called Donald.
Donald. That's a great
And
name for a horse.
his bridle was never taken off. Once his bridle was on in the morning, he was never taken off, and he was tied up if he was put back in his stable because he'd just turn his back on people. Now say poor bugger was saying I hate life, but And I didn't know this the first time I worked with him. And normally when we put them back in the stable in between rides, we just slip the bridles off. So I
Mm-hmm.
slipped the bridle off. And one of the older girls who'd been there for ages went absolutely into panic mode because, oh my God, you never take his bridle off. We'll never catch him. Oh my God, oh my God. So I was like, okay, fine. Again, at probably the age of 11 or 12.
Mm.
And so I just went and stood in the corner of the stable. And yes, he backed me into the corner of the stable.
Mm.
And all I was looking at was his feet and his ears flat back, and him watching me from the corner of his eye going, if you try and get to my head, I'm going to have you. And I just stood there and I just waited. And after probably, I mean, it seemed like hours when you think you might die. You know, I
Yeah.
sort of reached up and scratched him on his bum, and he thought that was nice. And then I gradually scratched him further and further forward. And then I caught him, put his bridle on, tied him up, and there was no problem. But it was almost like an instinct to say, well, listen to the horse, and rather than just
Mm.
go in there and try and get the bridle back on him in a panic, just go and sort of sit with him and let him know how you feel and how he
Mm.
feels, and
Mm.
try and work it together. So, and that was when I was very, very young. And then at the age of 14, my godmother's sister, who competes horses in America, was over. And my godmother ran a yard and there were lots of shows on, and they had a big Irish Draft stallion. And my godmother's sister, Sarah, also Sarah, just to be complicated,
Yeah.
was trying to get Boise tacked up for the working hunter class and get him platted up. And he was being an absolute prat to plat up because he was a stallion. He was only 5. There was a show going on the property, and he was just off his head.
Yeah.
And I remember just literally diving down under his feet, grabbing mouthfuls of hay that he'd thrown out of his hay net, and playing with him and, you know, teasing him and keeping him still for Sarah to plat him. And she said to me then, she said, if ever you want a job, she said, let me know.
Oh, okay.
So I was like, oh yes, please. So the following year when I was 15, flew out to America. Mum and Dad packed me off for 2 weeks to go and stay out with Sarah to see if it would work.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
we got on really well. And then so the following year, I was the last year of school to do O levels, and I did my O levels and I was gone. I didn't even wait for the results. I was gone.
Really.
And so
Wow.
yeah, so left home at 16 to play with ponies, and have played with ponies ever since.
And the
Um,
rest, as they say, is history.
yeah, but it is, but it's been such a learning curve. That was very much a competition yard. It was on a big ranch where they bred quarter horses and cattle.
Mm.
And Sarah would have her pick of the 2-year-olds, because they're all started at 2 over there, to bring on to show for the English style riding, because that's where the
Mm.
money was.
Mm.
So I was there to be a rider there and a hunter jumper and all that sort of thing, which yeah, it's not quite my ideal, but hey, it was what was offered. And but the old yard, the farm, the ranch yard where they did all the backing of the other horses and all the colt handling, and it was done much more authentically American. I mean, this area, they still walked around in 10-gallon hats, boots with the spurs on, and with a bloody 6-shooter slung on their hips in Walmart. You know,
Yeah.
it was
Yeah.
cowboy land.
Yes.
This was in the late 80s, and it was cowboy land. And I loved that side of it. And I was very fortunate to work with a lady up there, Mary Wade, and she had trained directly with Ray Hunt,
Right.
who is one
Okay.
of the sort of the founders of the natural horsemanship movement, which is not my favorite thing. The way, like everything, it gets popular, it gets bastardized, it's not what it's meant to be. But
Yes.
going back to the purity of the cowboy and his horse and the relationship they had to have for survival, I really got interested in that side of the horsemanship. But anyway, I was there for just over a year. Came home having promised my dad I'd go back to do my A levels and go to university, and I lasted about 3 weeks back in a school environment. I just
Yeah.
couldn't. I couldn't cope. I couldn't cope being inside. So I went down the route. I did my BHS AI, and ended up in a stand-up row with one of the examiners on my stage 3 riding, because I flatly refused to do with the horse what I had to do with the horse to pass my exam, because I didn't feel the horse was up to it, and told them basically that if they wanted me to abuse the horse and lower my standards to pass their exam, I wasn't prepared to pass their exam. So, and again, I was probably, what was I, about 18 at this point. So there's a bit of a theme here that, you know, the standing up for the horse has always been quite important for
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
So then I worked back with my godmother again for about 3 or 4 years. And then I decided I had to get away from family and friends. So I went and worked for a big showing yard. And I hated it again. You know, these poor horses, they were treated like these, I don't know, they're just inanimate objects. You know, they're so protected and so overhandled and so, you know, kept in their box. And I was a good rider, and I was allowed to ride the good horses. And there was one horse there, and he was, at the time, he was hack of the year, and I'm pretty certain at one point in his career he had been horse of the year. And I was given the honour of riding him.
Oh, wow.
And he was the most hideous horse ride. He was so stiff and so wooden and so shut down and so awful. And I thought, I've got to go. I've got to get out of this. So I actually was in the process of applying to the police force. At one point in my life, I thought I might join the army, but then, yeah, so I was going, because I thought I could do that, and I knew quite a lot of police people who had ponies, so I thought, I can have my own ponies if I'm a police person. So rationale there. And then my parents got a phone call from some people we'd known when I first met when I was 5. And they'd just bought the land around the farm. My sister and I used to go to school with 2 of their 4 sons, and they bought the land around the farm, and they wanted horses, and they were asking Dad if I still did horses. So that was 1993, and I'm still here.
Oh my goodness! Yes, okay. That's a few years ago.
So that was, you know, again, I was 22 when I got into that, and before that, I was involved in a horrible accident where a rider was killed in a road. Well, the horse and rider were both killed. She was only 11. In a ride, well, you know, the horse, something went wrong with the horse, and he bolted and basically ran into traffic, and killed them both when we were out on a hack. So I had a bit of a, you know, a kick in the face about, you never quite know what's going to happen around the corner. But I've actually, one of the reasons I want to be a coach is I've recently had some coaching on that, and some grief counselling coaching, even though it was that long ago. And just in a very quick sentence, she turned around my view of looking at it and has healed a wound that's been with me for well over 30 years. So,
wow.
So the newest side of me, which is the sort of the coaching on the human more than the horse, has come off the back of that accident, even though I didn't acknowledge it for over 30 years. But going forward from that, I got this amazing job where at 22 years old, I was given the job of buying not just buying the horses, but buying the tack, buying the equipment. There wasn't so much as a mucking out fork or a body brush. You know, there was nothing other than what I had. So bought the farm horses. They wanted a special horse for him and his wife, and then a couple of sort of general riding horses for the boys and for guests and whoever else. So we did that for about a couple of years, and then the boss said, well, what do you really want to do? And I was like, well, I'd love to event. So he sponsored me with an event horse, and so I got the eventing bug. My first 2 event horses both went up to advanced. Well, one was his horse. It was an 18-2 Clydesdale Cross Thoroughbred, and he went advanced, and I had a little exploit to pointer. But even then, I used to cringe about what I was expected to do. I always did an okay dressage, but it was never the best, because I'd jump the moon, but I do struggle with discipline in all phases. I struggled with disciplining the horses enough to make them really good and obedient dressage horses. I never minded if they had a bit of a say halfway through.
Yeah, and I think this is where you and I are very, very much aligned. And I'm going to just give you a little break from talking because I know you've talked a lot. Oh, bless them.
I'll just
never
shut the
work with
dogs up.
never work with animals.
Oh, don't. Sorry, someone just
um,
walked past the door.
no, it's all right. Don't worry. As I say, I like to keep these raw and real. That's what it is. But for me, I guess my upbringing with horses was actually very different. So I loved horses, but I don't know where it came from because, as you said, my family weren't really horse orientated. So I grew up in the Midlands. In the 70s, 80s, when there was still quite a lot of we were recovering from things like the coal mining industry and things like that. So there were obviously Shire horses, and there were, horseshoes everywhere and stuff. And I just had this really lovely feel for what horses were. And whenever we went on holiday to Blackpool, I would always want to ride the donkeys on the beach because that was, when I was little. And
Yeah.
I remembered crying every time I got taken off them. And then when I got home, I remember that I wanted a lot of the toys that you had, like your Barbie dolls, your Cindy dolls, but with the horses. So I never wanted to have like the actual doll itself. I wanted the horse. The doll would go over the shoulder, and I'd just be. And I remember just having these collection of like plastic molded horses, which obviously in the 80s they didn't really do much other than just be a horse. Um, and I absolutely loved it. I loved everything about them. But I grew up not really being close to horses, but always wanting to be close to horses. And I always loved, as you said, that you could call them problematic, but there were always the quirky horses. And when I was a student, I remember because I did go to university, I actually ended up sponsoring horses in sanctuaries and stuff because I wanted to help,
Yeah.
you know um, and yeah, I loved that. I loved every time I went somewhere, either be abroad or at home. We'd always go. Right, okay, we're going to that place. Oh, can we go visit this horse sanctuary, or can we go visit that, or can we go visit that? And can I give them pets and cuddles and stuff? Just because I don't know, I always felt at ease with horses. Because they live in the moment, don't they?
Yeah, very
A
much
lot of
so.
the time, and they don't judge you for who you are. They don't care what your title is, or what you know how good a human being potentially you might think you are, or whatever. They just take you for you, don't they? They follow you with your intent. And if your intent is to be kind and to be giving, then they tend to pick up on that. But I loved horses from a young age, and as I say, I've had most of my life where I've not come in contact, and then literally in my 40th year of being on this planet, so about 6 years ago now, um, I met a lady who was a personal trainer, and she had 5 horses, and she was literally saying to me as I was paying her to basically treat me treat me terribly, or at least should I say, help me work out and be fitter. She talked about horses and the fact that she owned them. So I ended up going into a field with her 4 horses at the time. There was one horse that was separate, and kid you not, it was the best thing ever. We just did poo picking, which if non-horse people are reading, are listening to this, then poo picking is pretty much the thing you'll spend most of your time with a horse doing.
Oh,
And,
yes.
but I loved it. I absolutely loved it. And I bought my first horse from her. The fifth
Okay.
horse that wasn't there, and then so I've been in the equestrian world only for 6 years, but
Right.
I've always had the same opinion that you've had, Sarah, which is horses should be treated as sentient beings, and therefore, just because you've got a plan, you've also got to suss out that they're okay with the plan, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah.
And it was really true, actually. Literally just on Saturday, because we normally Saturdays are mine and my husband's horsey days, and I got my husband into it. Not that he actually even really knew anything about horses, but he came along for the ride and quite literally wanted to do it with me, which is great because that means now that we've got two horses, I feel like I could share the burden,
Yes,
which
yes.
is great. But we had a lesson, and our horse that we were riding, Amber, bless her, she's a 16-year-old, 15 hands Irish sports horse, or should we say, you know, she was sold as, I think, as an Irish cross, but she's technically a sports horse because she's got a lot of thoroughbred in her.
Right.
And she wasn't up for it on Saturday. She wasn't in a good mood. You know, you felt there was just something about her. And I don't think you can really describe it very easily to people who've never ridden a horse. But it's a bit like, I always relate it to being in a car. When you sit in a car and you feel that something isn't right with the engine, right?
Mm.
The rhythm doesn't feel right, or there's a odd sound or something like that. To me, that's similar to when a horse doesn't feel right. I don't know if you
Yeah.
agree with that,
Yeah,
but
but it all goes down to frequency and vibration, doesn't it? It's all going
yeah,
down into the quantum, because when they're not feeling right, they're vibrating at a different level in the same way that we do. And
mm,
when they're vibrating at a different level, especially if that brings out a negativity, then
mm,
you need to listen to it, because I love horses to the very depth of my being, but I am not shy. I mean, the accident where the little girl was killed that I was involved in was nothing to do really with the horse's behaviour. It was just a tragic set of circumstances. But
uh,
horses can kill us,
yes,
and if you decide to ignore that, call it intuition, call it a bad vibe, call it gut instinct, and you decide to ignore it, then realistically more fool you.
yeah, yeah.
um
and,
so
and
yeah.
and I really get that because when I again, when I talk to people, friends. So again, a lot of my friends are not horsey related. So
Yeah,
obviously, when I got my first horse, everybody had to come and meet the horse, because I was really, and I was quite surprised at the amount of people who were close to me, who were friends for many years, but they actually feared
yeah,
coming to visit the horse because, as far as they were concerned, it is a dangerous element, and
yeah.
I get that. I totally get that. But
It's
there are
like
also,
the car's a
yeah,
dangerous thing to get in, but it doesn't mean that we're
yes,
scared every time we get in it. But it's a thing, as your analogy said, you've got to be aware of it.
exactly, and but there was also some people who knew nothing about horses but would come down and just do really well because they would just be open and respectful to the connection
Yeah,
that they had with the horse.
yeah,
Um, but it's interesting what you said about danger because I've also equally had some people who thought that they can just walk in, get the horse, sort of like get the rope or whatever that's round the head collar that's around the horse's head, get the rope that's following it, and then just literally follow them without it, and get them to and use them like
yeah,
they were a wheelbarrow or a bike,
yeah,
without any contact or any connection with this being, and and those people I've very much set the record straight, and so is the horse, to be fair.
yes.
That they're not just going to be able to come in and do that, you know.
No, no.
Um, and I think that's where you and I are very very aligned in that there's a lot of people in the equestrian world, and probably non-equestrian world as well, who don't understand the emotional and physical and psychological impact that horses have, or that we can have on horses by treating them that way. You know.
Yeah, it's a societal thing as well, in that horses, even though tragically a huge number of horses are not in herds, a
Mm,
horse is a very good member of a unit.
mm,
They work best when they are a member of a herd, of a group, of a conclave, of whatever you want to call it.
mm,
They work well as part of a machine, not on their own.
yeah.
And when it's just you and the horse, you are part of their herd.
Yes.
And again, herd life is safety, it's frequency, it's not isolation, it's trusting the people you're with.
Yeah.
And as the human, we've got to be trustworthy to the horse. And that in the human world today, there's a lot of isolation, even more so since COVID. There's a lot of
Yes.
isolation. There's a lot of there's a fear about community in that we hear so much bad. You know, we don't hear the good stuff, we hear the bad stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's a genuine fear of connection and community. And I think that resonates. That's why a lot of people struggle mentally, emotionally, because we're not in a herd. And when we have our horses, a lot of people, I think, desperately cling on to that feeling of community, because the horses are so good at being members of a community. Because in the wild and in their, okay, so we've domesticated them for the last 10,000 years, but they've been horses for 20 million years.
Yes.
So we're very small fry in their development, in their mental and emotional development. So that need to be in a herd, I think, is what draws us to them, because when you're with your horse, you're part of a group, you're part of a community. And there's a sort of a safety in that at a very, very subconscious sort of primeval level. And when we treat horses as our servants, which is what we've done for most of the 10,000 years or ever since we domesticated them, we miss that. And in some ways that was okay, because when horses had jobs to do, I won't say they had the best lives, I won't say they were pain free or anything, but at least they had purpose. And the same with people. And there's a lack of purpose in the world today. And I think that leaves horses and people sort of drifting, and then people are desperately trying to do right by their horse. And there is so much information out there, you know. Okay, what is it better to have shoes on the horse, or is it better to have it barefoot? Do you ride with a saddle or without a saddle? Do you use a bridle? Do you turn your horse out on its own or with friends? Do you put a rug on it when it's cold? Do you feed it this feed? Do you feed it that feed? What vet do you use? What farrier do you use? Is yours any good? Is mine any good? You know, what method of body work do you use? Oh, Joe says I should do this. Stan says I should do this. Martha's saying I should do this. You know, and we are just being bombarded from every angle with choices and options. And because we have no sense of community and safe within our own self and in our herd, that in that case is possibly just ourselves and our horse, we grab at so much external. And this is where another part of the reason that I'm going more into the human coach ahead of the horse, because until we can quiet our own mind and know our own direction, we can't come to our horse with true authenticity, no matter how hard we try. Because if we're listening to everybody else's opinions and the external vibes, we're missing what the horse is telling us in many, many cases.
See, I love that. I really do love that, because I actually had my first horse, actually I didn't have her for very long, unfortunately, and I'm not gonna go into huge amounts of detail on there, but I didn't. And the second horse I had, the first horse I had was I was told I needed I was going to have this horse, I was going to ride it, but that never really materialised. And actually, I'm very grateful I didn't, because the second horse I had was actually an ex-race horse called Dixie, and she was Hanoverian. She was 27 years old, and I effectively got her for free, because the owner said, I've separated her from her companion of X number of years, and she's gone downhill, and I don't think that she will survive the winter, so I need her to be cared for in the right way. And I was like, well, I don't know anything what I'm doing about horses, but I love horses, and I want to do the best for her, and more importantly, I've got a livery that will do that with me. So I took this 27-year-old horse on, not knowing really what I was doing. And not even knowing like the right brushes or anything, as you say, but I had people around me who did.
Yeah.
So what we did was we didn't start with horse riding as such. We started with horse management.
Yeah.
So me and my husband learned how to control what what her body language was telling us, how to control things, what reassurance she needed, all those sorts of things, horses,
Yeah.
grooming, etc. Everything like that, literally from where you start to literally to getting actually on the horse. We never rode Dixie. She was always ridden and jumped to an inch of her life anyway. So she had this great, lovely, audible click in her hip. So we were never going to ride her. But she
Right.
taught me so much. She taught me so much. You know, she taught me what I needed to do to gain her trust.
Yeah,
Ultimately.
people are too quick to ride horses these days.
Yeah.
And if they don't ride them, they feel that
Mm,
or they're told they're wasting them, or they're told they're scared of them, or they're told X, Y, Z. But actually,
mm,
as you say, spending time on the ground with them and learning how to read them and how to be part of their herd and part
mm.
of their community. The riding is actually such a small part of it that
And
we
it's
really need to
it's
get over ourselves.
yeah, 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 and it's amazing because with Dixie, it's not that she didn't want to trot. She was quite happy to trot in the school. But what we would do, we did try lunging, but she did freak out quite a bit with that. She clearly hadn't been doing that. So my husband would actually run alongside her, which was good for our health and good for her health.
Yeah,
But she was absolutely amazing. She would glide around the school, absolutely amazing. And we had her for 2.5 years, before she finally decided it was time.
yeah,
And I loved that, but it meant that I went into buying the next horse in a very, very different way, because
yes,
buying the next horse for me wasn't necessarily about, I don't know, looks or whatever. It was actually about what we were taking on, you know.
yeah,
Um, and I have to say that the next horse was actually probably quite problematic. And again, I'm sure we could talk about it for ages about what it's like to actually buy a horse. But I
mm,
I always describe it as it's actually like buying a car, except there's even less regulations,
yeah.
you
Oh
know,
yeah. I've got a
because
friend at the moment trying to buy
yeah,
something, and so
yeah,
far she's looked at about three. She must have sent me 30 videos,
yeah,
and
yeah.
yeah, it's
And
quite crazy.
there's always a story, isn't there, behind
Yeah,
it and stuff,
yeah,
But that's where I bought my other horse, Athena, who I currently don't ride, and I don't ride her for a number of reasons. But equally, she was sold to us as being ridden. Um, she's definitely been driven.
yeah,
That's obvious. Her feet were in awful state when we got her, um, but she does not enjoy being ridden. She
no,
just does not enjoy it. She stresses, she panics, she bolts, and we've made the conscious decision, after doing some investigations, etc., that says that look, let's not worry about it. Because the good thing about me right now is that it's not a career for me. So
yeah,
I don't have to panic and I don't have to get dressages and all that sort of stuff. I'm happy to just be with my horses. They're part of my family, they're part of my life. They give
yeah.
me
It's a
a lot of support. So I want to do
weird
what's right for
thing
her.
with horses, isn't it? Because we don't feel that we should be going out and taking our dogs to obedience classes and going to shows and doing this, that, and the
Mm,
other. But
mm,
there's this pressure that we should be out doing things with our horses, and
yes.
why?
Yeah.
As long as we're looking after them correctly, we're giving them species appropriate diet and housing and husbandry. Why? Where is this come from that we? Or when you're going to get out competing it? When you're going to ride it? When you're going to? I mean, I've got a 3-year-old, and yes, I've pulled her up to the mounting block with a head collar on and sat on her 3 times this summer.
Yeah.
And but I'm not breaking her in. She's been in a good mood. So I pulled her up the mounting block, said, "Do you mind if I sit on you?" And she said no. So I've sat on her.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
But some people are like, this client looking for horses. She sent me a video of a 3-year-old that she was
Mm,
looking at, and it was already jumping a course of jumps. And and people are like, "Oh, when are you going to do X, Y, Z with your horse?" And well, never. or if I feel like it. My other horse, I've had him 9 years. He did his
Mm.
first ever competition this year
Oh,
because he's an ex-race horse and he's had a huge amount of lameness problems. I've nearly shot him on so many occasions, but there's always been a reason I haven't. And
yeah,
suddenly this year he felt really good, so I took him and did a little dressage competition just because I felt that after 9 years we ought to just prove to the world that, you know, they're not, they can go out and do something if they don't do it very often. They don't have to go out and do dressage.
yeah,
And I might take him out once somewhere else if I feel like it, and if I don't, I won't take him anywhere. But there's this push to get out and do, get out and do, get out and do.
yes, there is. Yeah,
And
whereas you
if
say,
you don't, people think you're scared of the horse. Basically, if you won't get out and compete it, they think, oh, she's too scared of it to do that. And it's such a nonsense.
and there's a lot of, and as you say, there's a lot of information around horse ownership,
Yeah,
uh, wellness, etc. of horses. Um, I um, I would imagine there's probably a few people from my yard who are listening to this. I hope so, and I hope that they're enjoying it. But one of the things that I will say is I had a conversation with a vet at one point, and he's lovely, Scotsman, very spade is a spade. This is how you
yeah,
see it. And I asked him about a particular, what was it? There was this horse I was looking at to buy, and she was on a particular vitamin, I think, or something. It had a name.
right.
I can't remember what it was. And I said to the vet, I said, "What do you think about this horse being on this?" And he gave me the best response that I will always remember, which is, "Oh, that is really good for reassuring the owner that the owner is giving the horse something."
Yeah, yeah,
But actually, it's doing diddly squat
yeah.
for the actual health of the horse. And I had to laugh because I was just like, because it wasn't a cheap thing either,
No,
but this was just one of the many things that this horse had. And
yeah. People like to give their horses
yeah,
things. I think they're doing the right thing if they're giving them all these things to make them
yes,
X,
like
Y, Z.
vitamins or creams or, things like that.
Calmers or
Yes,
gut
yeah.
supplements or this. And some of them are relevant, but for the vast majority, it's actually the owner that needs to be giving the horse the thing rather than the horse needs the thing.
And I find that very fascinating because, as you
Yeah.
say, we've definitely domesticated horses, but I don't necessarily think that we've taken, uh, we know what's going on in their heads. I mean, again, you mentioned about the rugging, and again, for non-horsey people, in the winter, you would expect that horses will probably need some kind of coat because winters can be cold. So we put artificial rugs on them. My horses live out 24/7, which means that they don't have a stable. They don't have a stable. I have somewhere I could stable them if they really needed it, if they were,
Yeah.
but they don't get stabled. So they live under trees, and there's a certain amount of foliage, etc. But they live in this field. And my one horse, she's an Irish cob, right? So she's been in Ireland for most of her life. So really, the weather that we have in this country,
Yeah.
really no rush on her. She's like, oh, it's quite dry actually compared to Ireland. Um, but she grows her own coat. She doesn't need
Well,
anything.
really funny thing. There's this really weird scenario. There's a really
Mm,
thing that is called nature, and it's actually really quite clever. And it's been looking after horses for a
mm.
lot longer than we have been.
Yes, yes,
Now, it's very different if the horses have their, again, to non-horsey people. Sometimes if horses are ridden in the winter and they have a very thick winter coat, we'll clip the hair off
mm,
so that they don't get very hot and sweaty and then take ages to dry and end up with skin problems and a
yes,
chill.
yes.
So if you've clipped some of the hair off, then you might need to put a blanket of some sort on to counter what you've taken off.
Mm, mm,
But when I see horses just piled up with blankets because the owner is cold,
mm.
it it's actually quite unkind.
Yes, it can be, can't it? Because
We're not
yeah,
necessarily. I mean, if it's pouring it down with rain, and I know my horses are out most of the time. They do come in the mornings, but then they're out sort of 17, 18 hours a day.
Mm,
And they have got natural shelter, but no sheds to go into. And
mm.
if I know I'm going to be riding them, and if I know it's going to be wet, they will have something on them to keep them dry, just purely because it's not very nice for them to have tack put on them when they're wet.
No, absolutely.
And,
Yeah.
and you've got, you can't put a saddle on a horse that's got a wet, muddy back, because you're going to rub the mud into its skin and cause all sorts of issues. So there are practical sides of putting rugs on them, but you see these horses. I mean, at the moment, this time of year, it's so awkward because it might be quite cold first thing, and it gets
Yeah.
really warm in the middle of the day, and I'm seeing poor horses
Yeah.
standing in the field sweltering because the sun's come out and it's suddenly hit 20 degrees, and they're wearing a blanket that's sort of designed for first thing in the morning when it was 5 degrees,
Mm,
and I always call it ball in the bag.
mm.
It's like boil in the bag, and they must be so miserable.
And
But we
and it's
humans like to do it because they like to buy the rug to put on the pony to keep the pony warm and cut and safe. But as I say, nature's been doing this a lot longer than we have, and she's a darn sight better at it than we are.
it's so weird though, isn't it? Because as you say, you've seen that I'm the actual opposite at the moment. My neither of my horses have any, even a rain sheet, which for the non-equestrian is effectively a just literally a water a mat with no heat in it. Um, I haven't put that on my Irish sports horse because she's got quite a good coat coming through
Yeah,
already, and also she's not shivering. If
no,
she, I've seen her when she's not been impressed. She's been sitting there shivering, going, "I'm too cold. You need
yeah,
to do something about it." I'm cold, but I don't spend all day outdoors, so
no, and you
I'm not
don't have
with
a
you.
huge digestive system that's basically a boiler that's being
Yes,
constantly stuffed with food and is constantly churning out heat as a byproduct of the digestive system.
exactly, exactly, and I think that's kind of where it goes. I think we could talk about like literally horses the whole
We
day.
could,
I'm going
we
to kind of
could,
bring us back round to the people that have the
yeah,
horses. So obviously, you said you spent a lot of time in your previous history in your career looking after horses, handling them, etc. And now you want to focus on
yeah. I
the human side. So what
When you
key
compete a
thing
lot,
has
you
done
end
that
up
for
with
you?
when
Yeah,
you compete a lot, you end up with damaged horses, and I got very good at fixing broken horses. And that's sort of I stopped competing. I focused purely on rehabilitation. And what I've discovered over the years with the rehabilitation side of it is it's the owner's minds that need rehabilitating as much as the horse's bodies.
right.
Because if a horse has had a problem, an owner will often hold on to that problem and never let it go. So
Could you
I
give us
have
an exact? Could you give us a
an
relevant
example.
example
Yeah,
for
I mean,
that,
I,
please?
I have clients that will bring a horse that maybe they've had for 7 or 8 years, and I'll say, okay, what's your problem? And I will get the life story of every single injury, accident, fall, kick,
Mm,
lost shoe, bad trailer ride, any bad experience, and I will get a list.
mm,
And they rarely say anything good because the human mind likes to lock on to the bad because the bad could kill us. The good is just nice, the bad could kill us.
mm,
And the horses do the same. People say, oh, my horse learns the bad things quicker than it learns the right things. And it's like, yeah, because the bad things could kill it. So it needs to make sure that doesn't happen again. But
mm.
people hold on to the past. And what I've discovered is if I can actually work through the the limiting beliefs, the blocks, the resistances within the owner, I get a far better result with the horse. And
See,
that
that's
goes as
absolutely, yeah,
far
fascinating.
as,
Yeah.
your riders who turn up at the livery yard and see, the good rider of the yard is there and riding their horse. And so they won't get on their horse because they're worried about what other people are going to see or do or say or anything else. And most of us are far worse in our heads than we are in reality.
Yeah.
Like we might think we're a terrible rider, but actually we're not a bad rider at all. We just don't want to admit it because we're taught in society not to blow our own trumpet. It's taken me years to be able to turn around and say I'm a bloody good rider.
Yeah.
But it's
Yeah.
taken me a long time to be able to say that and not feel a bit as I say it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we are so stuck in our own heads and our own other people's opinions, and going back to when people are getting advice from every different direction. It's the paralysis by overanalysis. It's the overwhelm, the overload. It's too many options. It's having, like you throw a dog into a ball pit and it
Mm.
doesn't actually know which ball to pick up, so it just sits there and does nothing.
Mm.
So I really strongly believe that by getting people to understand their own mind and the reasons they feel inadequate or just not good enough, unworthy, and the real reason they feel fearful often is just purely because they're stuck in their own head.
Yeah, I
And
get that, and I really do resonate with that because again, I've had a bad fall off my horse. You know, we we were literally coming up to a pole to trot over, and this is a really good example, I think, of what you just said. Is I thought, oh no, I don't know if we can do it, and I think that completely radiated down to the horse, even though
yeah,
we've done it so many times. For
yeah,
that one time, I think I looked down and I went, "Oh no, it's going to, we're
go.
not going to do it or whatever." And then,
And with
I
that,
came off. Boom,
and with
that was
that,
it.
it happens. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. And so if I was worried, she was worried, and that's ultimately how it's been
mm,
for me and my horse at the moment. Is that if I'm worried about something in the school, she's automatically switched on. What's going on? Fight or
yeah,
flight? Where is this danger coming from? She doesn't know what the danger is, and I'm
no,
worried about something over there that she's probably not even realised.
blocked. Yeah,
Um, and so I've had to do a lot of work with emotional regulation to
yeah,
go, do you know what? Just because I'm worried about that doesn't mean that she's worried about that. And
no,
actually, I need to put my trust in her that she
yeah,
will actually do a good job.
and going back to what you said a little bit earlier, or at the beginning, about the you knew on Saturday that was not going to be a good day to do stuff. Your intuition. There's
Mm,
always that bit of balance between what is intuition and what is fear, and where do they connect?
mm,
Because of a bad experience, we can get a little bit stuck in fear, and then are we, and I'm not saying you are, I mean, I sound like you're very intuitive and you weren't even planning to ride, so it probably was intuition, not fear. But you can get riders going, oh, I think it's going to be a bad day today, I've got a gut instinct it's going to be a bad day today. But
mm,
is that intuition or is that fear? And as you start to understand and unravel what's
yeah.
going on inside the humans, you can start to distinguish between what is a fear-led concern and what is an intuitive-led concern. And the intuitive-led concern is the vibration coming off the horse that things aren't quite right. The fear-led concern will be what we're feeding back to the horses, and they can both end up with the same result. So if you've got an intuition that the horse isn't great and you get on it, which I did last year with my old boy, and I didn't listen, and so he bucked me off. He had every right to buck me off because he had told me at least 3 times he wasn't feeling it today, and I'd pushed.
Yep. Yep.
And so that was absolutely fine. That was no big deal at all. It was perfect within his rights. And that was, my intuition was telling me not to push it, but I was in a situation where I needed to ride him because I was taking out another client with a horse with a hacking problem, and I needed to be on a horse.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
that was, my intuition said this is going wrong. He was telling me, but on the flip side, if I'd come up to it going, oh, I wonder if he's going to buck me off today, the chances are he probably would have done, because he'd have then felt it, because the vibration is the same whichever direction it's come from,
Yes.
and it
Yes.
can
That's really interesting. Yeah.
equate the same result, even though one's come from intuition because the vibration from the horse is off, and one has come from fear because the vibration from the rider or handler. And it can be leading the horse, oh, is he going to run away from me? Oh, look, he's run
Mm,
away from me. you
Mm,
know, and it's balancing, it's teaching people there's a difference between this fear and intuition, even though they can feel and look very similar.
mm.
But again, it's coming into understanding emotional regulation and vibration and frequency and energy, because it is what we all are. It is what everything is. Everything is frequency, vibration, and energy.
And I love that because I've come at it from the other side, is that I've been working with people for a heck of a long time, you know, in my role as HR, etc., and in corporate and in small businesses. And I've come at it from the point of view of putting a person with a horse means that they effectively they reflect whatever you bring into the situation. So again, going back to my horse on Saturday, you know, she wasn't feeling it. She then actually then panicked a few times. She spooked in the school at a few things that we didn't quite understand. So she was telling us that she was on edge and that she wasn't going to like it. So I got on her, but rather than going, oh, I'm going to get on you and I'm going to trot and I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, I got on her and I said, look, let's just have a little go. Um, and I'm going to pick up your hand and I'm just going to walk with you. And if it's
Hmm.
too much, then that's fine. We'll pull back, you know. So we
Yeah,
didn't achieve much, except that we both knew we could do it. So we
yeah,
pushed each other out of our comfort zone just a little bit.
yeah.
I didn't
But
achieve what I initially thought I was going to achieve, which was a good trot, but I didn't worry too much because
no.
I equally didn't come off either.
And that is horsemanship. You know, horsemanship is having a good experience with your horse. It's not making your horse do. It's not how clever you are. It's not can you
Mm,
do piaffe, passage, or flying change. You know, does your horse lie down on command? That's irrelevant. What is
mm,
relevant is, does your horse feel safe with you, and do you feel safe with that, with your horse? And by
mm,
what you've just said, by saying, okay, look, we get worried about this riding lark sometimes, so let me just get on you, and then we'll just see what we can both cope with, and anything is good enough.
yeah.
And then the horse has known that you've heard it and you've listened to it, so she knows now that she has a voice and she can talk to you. And once you
That's right.
give
Yeah.
something a voice, whether it be a horse or a human, the anxiety can just disappear.
Yeah.
Once something or someone, as you'll know with your, with your experience, you open up an outlet for that anxiety, that stress, that self doubt, just
Yeah.
by saying, I hear you, I'm listening.
It's absolutely amazing because you're absolutely right. When I first got on her, we were both quite stressed. We were tight. We were tense. And as we were both like going, we're just gonna play it by ear. We're not gonna do anything major. We're just gonna do a couple of circles and then change lane, do another couple of circles. We're just gonna enjoy the fact that we are working together
Yeah,
because we hadn't done that for a week or so. Um, and just make sure that we're okay, and then as you say, ended up on a positive note. She
yeah,
pushed herself really well just through that little bit. She was having a problem with shadows that day. So every time her shadow was crossing over her in front of her, she didn't like it,
right. Yeah,
basically. Don't know why. She's done that before, but that day it wasn't good. So
no,
so I pushed her out of her comfort zone a little bit, did a couple of circles, we did fine, didn't take it too quick or whatever. I told her that I was happy with her, and then I got off her and I basically just gave her a big hug, said well done, gave her a treat, etc. Positive reinforcement, and then that was it. And I didn't expect any more from her. And she automatically, as soon as she realised that she didn't need to give more, she
yeah,
relaxed. She
yeah,
relaxed under me. I could feel everything relax. You know,
yeah,
I sat on the saddle more better. Her head dropped, her lip dropped, which again, question from her. That's a good sign. Licking and chewing in the school, so she knew what was expected, and I wasn't going to go further, and that was it.
yeah,
But some people really do struggle with that, and as you say, it applies to the human as well.
yeah.
Some humans struggle to chill and to know
Yes,
that anxiety and to try and work out what is bothering them and how they can prevent that in the first
yeah. And giving people the power of not really caring what other people are thinking or saying.
place.
And
Yes.
that's not arrogance, and it's not the point of, if someone says, "Oh, look, she's lame," and you hadn't noticed, and you decide to ignore them. No, not like that.
Yes. Yes.
But that, oh God, did you only just get on and walk her? Or I'd have got on her and I'd have made her do this, that, and the other. And then you
Yes.
think, well, should I have done that? But if you're more empowered in your own mind and you understand, and this is the thing to me that coaching has brought to my mind, if you understand how the psyche works, you then have the tools to resist other people's opinions without being rude and without being dismissive, but just to be able to walk your own path. But some people actually need permission to say no. A lot of people don't know how to say no to
That's right.
others when they're giving advice. And where I want to take the human coaching is empowering riders or even handlers or horse owners in whatever guise they are,
Mm.
to quiet the noise. Just
Yeah.
quiet the noise and do what's right for you. Because if you're doing what's right for you, you will hear the horse. Whereas if you're trying to please everybody else, you won't hear the horse.
And I think that's I love that, hearing the horse. I think that's great, and I absolutely agree with you. And I can't believe that we're already coming up
An
to
hour in.
about an hour. So I'll probably say
Yes.
we should leave it there. But
Yeah.
just to give an idea for our listeners. So what is it that what is the best way for people to work with you then at this point? What kind of plans have you got in place to help people?
At the moment, I'm still developing where I want to go with it because it's a very
Mm.
different direction.
Mm.
And I need to take we're coming up to, well, we're coming into the winter, which is the worst time to work with horses. But
It really is, isn't it?
yeah,
Yeah.
but my
Yeah.
plan going forward will be like workshopping in the human emotional space,
Yeah.
teaching people how their emotions are affecting their experiences with their horses, and can even be affecting the health of their horses in the same way as can be affecting their own health,
Mm.
and how to understand our own minds to put us in a better place to then take control of our own minds and come back into a more positive area. And what I do offer is I do offer residential, where people come for 3 to 4 days with their horses.
Mm.
And that's horse and human led. In the past, it's mainly been working more on the horses, but going forward in the future, there would be a lot more working on the person as well as the horse. And I want to set up some residentials that don't actually involve the horses.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not so much people bring their own horses. We can utilize my horses because you don't have the same emotional reaction to other people's horses as you do your own.
You're absolutely right.
So
Yes.
going forward, I've got lots of plans in mind, but I'm not. I've always been the problem solver with the horse, and I've
Mm.
got to work out the best way to be the problem solver with the person.
Mm.
But I'm always open to talk to people if they have a problem, whether it's with their horse or whether they think, having listened to this, that it might be a bit of an emotional
Mm.
setback in themselves. Because if you change yourself with the horse can be a great catalyst to make us look to a change in ourselves, but the
Mm.
change in ourself will make us better human beings and give us a better life in all walks of life, not just with the horses.
Yeah, and I love that, and I love the plans that you have. To be fair, I think, Sarah, you're probably somebody that I actually almost want to be, because I've got obviously two horses, but they're on a livery yard at the moment, so I've got to respect that. But I'd love to do some residential stuff with horses, because, as you say, um, from a leadership perspective, I think there's a lot that humans who lead other humans, can learn a lot about their own skills from working with horses, because the
Yeah,
horses don't know that you're a manager or a leader, and so they will focus on what you tell them,
yeah,
just as how you bring it to them. rather than necessarily because they think they should. So there's a lot there with that, and I think that people would get a lot from it. So I am really keen to see
But
how things are
at,
going with you. Yeah.
at the end of the day, the love of the horse is at the core of my soul. But for the horses to have a good life, the owners
Mm,
have got to be in the right place. And I think welfare, well, there's so much about welfare. I mean, I'm part of the Welfare Stewarding Alliance, but there's so much about equine welfare.
mm,
But when you look at it, the people aren't in that good a place either. So how can they do right by their horses when they can't even do right by themselves?
sounds. Yeah, I
And
agree.
that's what we need to address. We need to get people in general better in themselves. And then that will feed through to their horses, but it'll also feed through to their relationships with their family, with their spouses, their jobs, just life in general.
It goes all the way through,
It
doesn't it?
does go
It goes
all the way
all the way
through, but the
through.
horses are a good catalyst because they're
Yeah,
emotional. They tend to be a passion,
yeah,
and
yeah.
they're quite, the desire to do better by your horse might make people work harder at being better themselves.
That's great. Well,
So
I think we should
we'll
probably
leave you with that.
leave it
Yes.
with that. Yeah, but I just wanted to say thank you so much for your time because
No, thank
it's
you for asking
been
me.
it's been lovely to actually talk to somebody who's as passionate about horses as I am as well. And I think you and I could probably do some quite interesting collaborations together. So
Yeah, for
maybe we
sure.
could say watch this space for people. But
Absolutely.
you
Absolutely.
know,
Well, no,
but
it's been great fun. Thank you for
yeah,
inviting me on. Appreciate
good.
it.
No worries at all. So yeah, so thanks for to all of our listeners for joining us today. And if this has actually sparked something in you, and you'd love to speak to Sarah or myself, I'll pop the links down as to how you can contact us on our various social media platform in the podcast description. But yeah, until next time, yeah, stay grounded, stay curious, and keep living authentically, everybody. So have a great day. Thanks very much, Sarah. Take care now.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.